Stan Lee is a comic icon, and because of the MCU, also a film icon. Personally, I was very lucky to have met him at a convention in 2014, which really has become one of the highlights of my life. It seems like due to weird rights issues, LEGO might never make a figure of him, but that didn't stop me from getting a minifigure of some sort. So today I have not one, but two different Stan Lee figures, both of which are from higher end figure companies, and because of that have higher price tags, and it makes me wonder which one is better. If you are somewhat familiar with customs, you might recognize the name Christo, just because they are one of the first LEGO customizers that used pad printing like LEGO. They've been around for pretty close to a decade, and they have a crazy catalog with a lot of range, including a lot of Star Wars and superheroes. Closer to the present, it seems like they're also focusing on recreating classic art with a LEGO style, or parodying the actual art pieces with different themes like Star Wars. Over the years, the prices of their figures have gone up and up, and a lot of that popularity is just because of their brand name. Some figures have interesting custom molded parts, but for the most part are pretty plain in my opinion. The public discourse around them has really shifted recently. There have been a bunch of figures in the past that were promised several years ago even, and keep getting postponed, and this is definitely a reason why you should be pretty cautious when buying their products. Moving on, Lifebrick started making figures more recently than Christo, with their first pad-printed figure being worked on around maybe 5 years ago. I wasn't able to find a whole lot of information on them, but like Christo, they also have a pretty wide range of figures. Unlike Christo though, Lifebrick goes for a more detailed design approach and strays a little bit away from what LEGO might do. Comparing those two companies though, they both have a pretty high price point, but Lifebrick seems to have a lot more extra printing on figures, so it might be a little bit easier to justify the price on them. Personally, because I've only bought this one figure so far, I haven't experienced any issues on my end. From what I've seen online, they have issues with making enough figures where companies will say that they have them in stock, but not actually get them from Lifebrick, and it seems like there might be a little bit of an issue with quality control sometimes. I know personally on this figure, you're going to see that. And with a lot of these higher end customs, they create an artificial scarcity that drives up that price by printing 100 or less of each figure. And because of that limited amount and the desirability because of it, it makes the price go up in the aftermarket. And with all that background between the two companies out of the way, here are the two actual figures in their special packaging. And for this review, we're going to start off with the Crystal one. I would definitely say they have a really amazing presentation, just looking at this extra little bit of cardboard on the outside acting as a sleeve. Lots of interesting printing with like the zebra pattern and the logo name there. Just quick sliding that off reveals another printed package. Of course, this one being a harder plastic, has a logo in the top right as well as the name going across. You kind of see the collector card on the back there with little thank you and then signed by the customizer. It's always nice sliding those off. It's always smooth. And the figure is just bagged on the inside. And with that figure out, you can see the other write-up on the inside of a certificate of authenticity. This figure is printed on January 7th, 2018, and I have number 35 out of 200. So I would say definitely something interesting about this is that there is a specific number of these figures printed out, and 200 is actually pretty high compared to what I would expect for the price of these figures. Just looking at the number for most Citizen Brick figures that get released, they release like 500. Kind of comparable, but it is still a little bit on the lower side maybe. And with the Christo Stan Lee out of the packaging, it is just kind of amazing I finally own a figure by Christo. And being a person that I have a lot of respect for, and it's too bad that they passed. I will say getting this figure was kind of a nightmare. I had to wait months for it to get shipped by the K-Lore project, which I bought it from, and they delivered it to the wrong address somehow. Even though the order had the correct one, they sent it to one that I made a previous order to, and even with that first order that I made from them also had random issues, but I'll just say I don't think I'm ever going to buy from them again. This figure though, got it on sale for a price in my price range. I'm very happy to have gotten it for less than what the original listing price was. just because looking at it, it is so simple. Just having a couple of different colors on the front and again on the back, just simple sweater printing. And the face, it has pretty great detail. The sunglasses definitely end up looking like that, like it is just glass passing over skin. The mustache and all the different face lines are very clean, but that leads me to the disappointments of this figure. The hairpiece, just plain gray, and the legs, no printing on it at all, no belt or anything, which is just too bad because their Lego Marvel Superheroes versions of the character had a belt and also had printed hair, and I definitely think something like that would push this figure even further for it being such a premium product. There's just not a whole lot to it, and even putting it next to this purist and kind of custom with a painted hairpiece Stanley that I made years ago as a kid. It has basically the same green sweater, of course, yellow skin tone. And it's just so weird to see something like this, just so similar. And it really just makes you think, where does the cost for this figure come from? None of the parts on this figure are probably hard to source at all. The head only has the one print. And again, no special hairpiece or anything. I'll just throw on this custom painted hairpiece by me. Not like the best job on it or anything, but adds a little bit of character to the figure and makes it a little bit more like Stan Lee was in real life. So if you have another one of these gray hair pieces laying around, you get this figure. I definitely think this is a good upgrade and makes it a little bit more interesting. Let's move on to Lifebricks after checking out this kind of underwhelming Christo figure. Now let's move on to the Lifebrick figure of Stan Lee, which is, funnily enough, in the same outfit as the previous one. Has, I think, Life Star branding at the top right and the Stan Lee signature on the left. A little bit of a Stan Lee image in the background. And this is a pretty stereotypical plastic container that you get with a lot of different comic figures. This would usually be a separate card, but looks like it's a sticker for this one that's stuck in the container. And you're able to just get the bag with the figure out. And this one even includes 2 custom molded hands, which I'll show off with the figure. And it's a much simpler packaging. Let's move on to the figure. And getting the Stan Lee on the stand, it is honestly just mind-blowing how awesome this figure is. With a custom hairpiece as well. There's just a lot going right for this figure. I do think the torso is either fully printed this more lime green or it's dyed. Looking on the inside of it, you can see that it is a little bit different color than what is on the outside. So they did some sort of wizardry to make this torso a little bit different. And it's probably a little bit more obvious looking at the neck peg that the darker green is over this lime green. Honestly, having it completely printed a different color probably works pretty well for it. Having the bottom of the sweater going onto the legs and having the colors both match very well, just with those extra details, just pushes this figure forward as a much more premium product. On top of that, just the right amount of simple details. He's just wearing a sweater, but just having that more accurate color and also these special printed arms works so well to make this figure come to life. You can see that all the way wrapped around printing of the sweater sleeve and also the undershirt. And even goes down to the legs with shoe printing that goes all the way around. I will say I got this figure secondhand from somebody and it has a little bit of a defect on the back of the shoe there. I'm not sure if this is how the figure came delivered or if that happened at some point in the previous owner's usage of this figure, but I'm very glad it's on the back of the leg, so at least it still looks nice from most angles. And moving that leg out of the way, you can see the shoe continues on the inside. So it just has all those extra details, lots of great, simple and effective printing. And even that face print, nice and smiley and accurate to what Stan Lee looks like. With them side by side, they both kind of have a smile. This one just seems more alive. This one just seems like it would be a wax statue of Stan Lee. With the custom hairpiece, it actually is pretty loose. You know, it's a very thin piece, so I'm going to have to be very careful not to damage it somehow. And you know, the face, maybe it's the eyes are a little bit bigger and more spaced out. So it seems a bit more animated than the Christo version. But either way, looks great. And like I said, with the packaging, it has those custom hands. I'll throw those on quick. These definitely have an interesting look. And, you know, the color is a little bit off. You can see they're much paler than the normal skin color. It's kind of weird. They are very loose, but there's enough friction that they're not just going to fall out. For the most part, I think that these would be mostly used for just a quick photo. I don't know how many people would actually want these on the figure all the time. They are closed, so it's not like you can hold anything with them. It'd be kind of fun to get these in more actual Spider-Man colors to actually use those for Spider-Man, but maybe you could get a Peter Parker figure with these on. But compared to Christo's figure, you get 3 custom molded parts and a bunch of extra printing for almost the same price, if not the same price, if you got them at the market value. And I really think it's like a pretty easy draw to say that this one's way better, way more detail. And that Christo figure just feels a lot more like a scam looking at this one. I'll swap out the head for the Christo one. Let's see what that looks like on this torso. So here's that option with that painted hairpiece again. Not a terrible look. I think what kind of throws this design off is that the mustache is just solid gray, no like lines in it or anything. It just has really thin printed lines that don't necessarily fit the Lego aesthetic and what they might usually do. I'll just take this hairpiece off quick. And it's just too bad, you know, this face print, it has a very good likeness. But it just, like I've been saying, it's just very stiff, not very expressive. But you know what? I do really like this look with all of this put together. It'll be kind of tough to choose which of these heads I would want on each figure. I'll probably just keep the designs with what the rest of the figure should be. Just have the 2 of them, but this would still make for some decent photos. And I hope this is kind of helpful to kind of show you what the different combinations could look like. It's honestly amazing that these 2 different figures have the same basis for the clothing worn by Stan Lee. And let's show them together and wrap up the video. And after seeing both of these figures individually and now together, it really makes you wonder why a Christo figure ends up costing the same as the Lifebrick one. Really seems like they print the same amount of figures, and Lifebrick has way more detail than Christo for the most part. I guess you could look at the presentation of the figure case on the Christo one having that extra cardboard sleeve. So if you're in the market for collecting cardboard, that would be really great for you. Take away the cases though, it's really hard to see how this figure is a high quality premium product. It would be much improved if it had that extra leg printing and the printed hairpiece found on their older version of the figure. And that Lifebrick one, it has amazing detail all around, crazy wraparound printing, a custom molded hairpiece, and the 2 hands. Value for the price is way better, and the color and likeness matches a little bit better too. Knocking off a little bit of points on the Stan Lee by Lifebrick just because the back shoe printing was scratched a bit on mine. But other than that, I've been very happy with this figure. And for me especially, for an expensive figure like this, I want to get the best bang for my buck. And it can be really difficult when the price goes up. I know personally I wish more companies went out and printed more affordable pad printing custom figures to fill up our collections, especially in the superhero sort of line. For me though, I'm glad to have some awesome Stan Lee figures for my collection, and I'll make sure to use these in comparisons in the future. Let me know, are you a fan of the more detailed Lifebrick version, or are you still a Christo fan? And if you want to see more custom Lego figures and Marvel specifically, I have a ton of videos of those on my channel. I've been Brick Ratty Up, and I'll see you in the next video.